What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Unlockables podcast, the story of video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. As always, I'm your host. My name is Eric. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. Wherever, whenever, in time and space you may be located. It means so much to me that you're willing to stop by and check out the show, see what is going on in the world of video games. Welcome to the number 2 second community game of the month as voted on by you, the listeners, the members of the Discord, and the Unlockables patrons. Thank you so much for your support in advance. But we have another exciting game of the month today. This game was chosen by the fans for me to play for the month of November. I'm rambling on. My guest today to come on the show volunteered to come on and talk about this game. And as you can see by the title, we are talking about Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, and today's guest is a very, very special person to me. He is a very, very good friend, a very, very well-respected and thought-of member of our podcasting community. It is, of course, none other than the famous Poppy the Masked Keaton. Keaton, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing really well, and that is some of the nicest things anyone has ever said about me. And it's being recorded, so I can listen to it anytime I get down.
I can send you just a little clip of that if you'd like, just to play over and over.
Yes. Oh, now I am well. Things are going good, and I'm getting to talk about Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, so I am very excited for that.
Yeah, we'll talk about in a couple seconds when I introduce the game here why you wanted to come on for this game specifically, because you messaged me like right away as soon as the games went up for the month. You were like, hey, if Sly wins, I want to be on the episode. And I thought that was really, really great. So we'll talk about that in a second. But in case this is somebody's first episode or somebody new to our wonderful little community we have, who are you? What do you do? How did you get into this kind of podcasting community that we find ourselves in?
I am Poppy the Masked Keaton, and I am the support character for the podcast community. I do not have a podcast of my own, but I tend to just try to support everyone else's because I work with the Secret Levels podcast, and yep. I organize their, what's the thing for not biannual, semi-annual, their semi-annual
yes.
Trivia show, the Retro Olympics. And
yes.
Because it is video game trivia based, I happen to listen to a lot of podcasts to get a lot of video game trivia.
Yeah, I think I first met you. I think it was you were organizing Retro Olympics, or I know I met you through the Secret Levels Discord when I joined. It was either that or through, I think you were also friends with our good friends over at the Retro Hangover as well. So I think I met you through one of those two communities. And yeah, I got to participate in one of the aforementioned Retro Olympics with a bunch of people. And you did a really awesome job of writing some incredible questions that really kind of stumped us. And me and my partner, Josh from Still Loading, we kind of went on a run there, but we kind of got stumped up by some of the last questions and weren't able to quite bring it home. So yeah, that's a really great production. If you haven't gone and listened to that, check out Secret Levels. That's a really awesome show as well. Those guys have been a big inspiration for what I do over here. So yeah, I guess without further ado, Keaton, unless you have anything else you'd like to say at the top of the episode here, why don't I dive in to start giving some of the people the general information on Sly?
Crack that safe and let's get to all the precious information inside.
Oh yes, let's do it. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, also known as Sly Raccoon in the PAL regions, is a 2002 action and stealth platforming game for the PlayStation 2. It was developed by Sucker Punch Productions and published by Sony. You may know Sucker Punch today. They're more notably known for they're the developer of Ghosts of Tsushima and the upcoming Ghosts of Yotei. The first Sly game was followed up by 2 sequels also made by Sucker Punch, Sly 2 Band of Thieves and Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. A 4th game titled Sly Cooper Thieves in Time was released in 2013 by a different developer, Sanzaru Games, who were also responsible for the remastered trilogy, which was titled The Sly Collection, that was released on the PlayStation 3. Sly Cooper was actually the second game developed by Sucker Punch following their 1999 release, Rocket Robot on Wheels. Sucker Punch utilized Autodesk Maya Sly had to develop the assets for the game with the goal to make the game look illustrated, a mere step away from a flattened kind of graphical style. And we'll touch on some of the graphics later in the show. We have some release dates here. In North America, the game was released on September 24th, 2002. Australia, January 16th, 2003. And Europe, January 17th, 2003. I did not find a release date for Japan, so I'm assuming the game maybe never came out in Japan. Not quite sure there. Got some review scores here from critics, just kind of give you an idea of how this game performed when it came out. On Metacritic, it is sitting at an 86 out of 100. All Game, it is sitting at a 4 out of 5. Edge Magazine, 6 out of 10. EGM, 8.33 out of 10. Eurogamer, 8 out of 10. Game Informer, 9.25 out of 10. GamePro, 4 out of 5. GameSpot 7.8 out of 10, IGN 8.5 out of 10, XPlay on G4 TV 5 out of 5, Entertainment Weekly A-, and this one was the most surprising to me. Playboy gave it an 85%. I don't know if in all of my research if I've ever come across Playboy doing video game reviews. I thought that was kind of interesting. I read Playboy for the video game reviews. That's what I read it for.
That would undoubtedly be the work of Carmelita Fox.
Oh, you're probably right. That's probably a good explanation for that. As far as for sales, Sly 1 sold 400,000 copies within a year of its release, and this qualified the game for the PlayStation Greatest Hits classification. By July 2006, the game had surpassed 800,000 copies sold, earning Sucker Punch $21 million in North America. I have some awards here. The game was nominated and won some awards. At the Game Developers Conference 2003, they won Best New Character and was nominated for Excellence in Visual Arts. And the IGN Best of 2002, Sly was runner-up Best Platformer and was also nominated Special Achievement for Graphics. And at the 6th Annual DICE Awards, the Sly Cooper picked up some awards for the Outstanding Achievement in Animation and Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction, in which it was both winners, and was also nominated for Console Action/Adventure Game of the Year. I constantly have to remind myself that when I see the sales numbers for some of these older games, that 400,000 copies within a year of releases was pretty good back in 2002, and then 800,000 lifetime total sales. Gaming was not quite as big as it was today, so 3 to 5 million hits, so units sold was like a smash hit. So, but I think 400 to 800,000 copies was still pretty respectable back in the day. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about our personal experiences with this game, Keaton. Like I said at the top, when I put up the 4 games for the community game of the month, you messaged me and was like, hey, if Sly wins, I want to come on and talk about this game. So what's your personal experience with Sly, and why did you want to come on and talk about it?
I just enjoy it. I love it a lot. It's just good fun. Like, I mean, I can't delve into the deeper narratives, I don't think, but no, it's the gameplay is great. The characters are fun. It's just one of those video games. It's that perfect palate cleanser game that you don't want something crazy deep. It's the very simple story, but it's expertly told. You're getting your book back, and you got your friends, and you're going to pull off a bunch of thievy stuff, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think we'll touch on that when we talk about kind of the game as a package for sure. I have in my notes before I touch on mine here. I kind of considered Sly Cooper as part of this second wave of PlayStation mascots, an unofficial second wave. Nobody's coining it that. I'm just calling it that. So after we had games like Crash and Spyro that came out, around this time we got games like Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. We got the first Ratchet and Clank, and we also got Jak and Daxter. Did you have any experience with some of those other titles as well, Keaton? Because I kind of put them all in kind of the same family.
I did. I got to those later. Got to those later on in life. Sly Cooper I actually ended up playing for the first time in 2008, according to my save data, which is still there.
That's right. I was very impressed. You sent me the screenshot and you were like, I have saved data from 2008. I was like, wow.
And I remember playing it again in 2016. So apparently I just fire up this game every 8 years.
Hey, that's a decent cycle to be on. There you go. And like I said, I'm assuming based on your save file that you were able to play it on original hardware. We kind of had that conversation too about how I unfortunately had to legally emulate it because I didn't know if I could hook up my PlayStation to any of my TVs in my house, or even find a copy of it on eBay for like a respectable amount that wouldn't break the bank and get me in trouble with my wife. So I was not sure about that. But yeah, I'll touch on my experience a little bit here. The PlayStation 2 in general was a really formative console for me. When I was growing up, I had a Super Nintendo, I had a Nintendo 64, and I had a PlayStation. I didn't get to experience Sega till much later in life. But this is where my gaming kind of became more focused. Once the PlayStation 2 came out, that was really the only thing I had aside from my Game Boy Advance, which is another console I love very much. And PlayStation 2 kind of became my main focal point for gaming. I miss the GameCube. I had a very, very intersecting moments where I played Xbox games like Halo, but I didn't actually ever own an Xbox till I bought my 360. So yeah, the PS2 was a console that I had a lot of formative memories on, and has a lot of games that I really, really consider to this day as some of my favorites of all time. I played a ton of the Dynasty Warriors games on there. I have a really, really soft spot for the Dynasty Warriors games. Obviously, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, like two of my favorite games of all time, were on that console. And I just had so many other ones that I can't even like think about. Like there's a Tupperware bin under my stairs of PlayStation 2 games that I'll just have to break out and go through, because I accumulated so many throughout the PS2's lengthy life cycle. I mentioned before, I consider this kind of the second unofficial wave of PlayStation mascots, Sly, Ratchet, and then Jack. I've played like 5 games in the Ratchet series, and I have played the first Jack and Daxter, although not all the way through. But I somehow missed out on Sly when he came out, and that's kind of surprising because I love mascot platformers. They're one of my favorite genres of video games, and you know, Mario's kind of taken all the sales out of that genre, or the wind out of the sails of that genre. So we don't really get a lot of those aside from Mario games that come out every so often. So I just completely missed Sly when he came out, and I missed the remaster when it came out on PS3 too.
That is such a shame, because yeah, the other games are great. I did love me some Jack and Daxter, and we got to play a lot of the Ratchet and Clank. But yeah, I don't know. There was just something about this crew of thieves that just stuck with me. And yeah, it might have been the whole. I say it might have been the furry aspect, but Jack and Daxter was kind of a furry game too.
I mean, all three of the games kind of had the anthropomorphic kind of animalistic style, like mascot that kind of people were going for. I think less on the Mario side where he's like a real person, probably more of like, I would say more of like a Sonic classification. Although I don't think anybody can be as cool as Sonic. He was just too cool for everybody.
Oh yeah, no, these guys are great. Sly's great, but he's no Sonic when it comes to being cool.
Nobody can be as cool as Sonic. I agree. But so yeah, when this game got nominated for the Game of the Month, I was really, really happy because I always wanted to go back and kind of experience the Sly series, because I'd experienced Ratchet and I experienced Jack and Daxter, and these games I really kind of consider those 3 games kind of like a really core, like seminal foundation of what I think of when I think the PlayStation 2. I think of these games' art styles and the way that they played and how kind of like wacky and cartoony they are. And I think I was just missing Sly in my video gaming history. So yeah, that's a little bit about my experience with it. Keaton, do you have anything else you want to kind of add before we start to dive into the good stuff?
Just for talking about the PlayStation 2, this was the first console that I ever just bought with my own money. And it kind of sticks out for me with that. Like everything else had always been Christmas presents or birthday presents. But I was working this really I was in college at the time, but I was out on summer and I was working this factory job. And I was just so exhausted. It's like, wait, I have this money. I can just go out and buy this because I really wanted the PlayStation 2.
What a concept. Yeah, I was still a little bit younger when the PlayStation came out, so I had to the PlayStation 2 came out. I had to rely on either like a Christmas gift or a birthday gift to be able to obtain it. And I remember that we got the console before we got any games, and I don't remember what the specific reason around that was I told the story about how my dad got the PlayStation 1 from his workplace. I don't want to say that he like stole it, but I think he probably acquired it through like less than conspicuous means. He worked at a place that made the in-store displays where you could like play the games in store.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think there was a PlayStation 1 lying around and he took it home and brought it home for me. I think probably the similar thing happened with the PlayStation 2 because I just remember it kind of like showing up in my house, and it showed up in my house, but I only had all my old PlayStation 1 games to play on it. And I didn't have any PlayStation 2 games to play on it until like Christmas, which was like 3 months later. And then I remember getting Kingdom Hearts 1 for Christmas, and that kind of, set me off on that whole adventure. That's been a dominating part of my life. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into talking about some of the main points here of Sly Cooper. I found this one interesting to kind of try and break out the notes, Keaton, because I found that this game works so well as like a package together. Everything in this package kind of like works off of one another to like give you a really great gaming experience, I think. Not to spoil my final thoughts about the game, but of course I was going to be positive on this game because it was a blast to play and I was excited, looking forward to playing it. But I think gameplay is a good place to start because I think that's the core identity of what you would consider Sly Cooper to be. So I want to toss it back over to you because I've been rambling a lot. Just you can take it any direction you want. What are your thoughts here on kind of some of the general gameplay of Sly Cooper?
I really enjoy it. I enjoy how it starts out very simple, but it gets slowly more complex, but it only gets as complex as you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the mechanic of rebuilding the Thievius Raccoonus.
Yes, that is the main point that we're on.
All right. So for those of you who haven't played, each little level you get into, you can explore the level and find bottles that have a piece of a clue in it. And if you collect enough clues, then Bentley the computer, the genius turtle of your organization, will crack a code and let you open a safe that is hidden in that level. And each time you open up each safe contains a piece of the missing Thievius Raccoonus. And so I love the fact that it just introduces a new mechanic. Like the first time you get it, it's like, hey, this teaches you the diving attack technique. Mm-hmm. And you get all these different techniques that you can do, a diving attack, a slow motion, or a speed up mechanic, or some other various moves. And it's really nice because like you can try all these different things, or if you just want to keep it simple and work on stealth, you can do that too. And man, it's just that's just so rewarding.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that kind of is the core basis and the thing that really kind of struck me about the gameplay structure of Sly. First of all, you mentioned the intro level. I want to go back and touch on that for a second because I'm a sucker for intro levels. I really pay attention to how, intro level 1 is like the developer's first chance to make an impression on you. So they're going to do something that tries to leave a big impression on you, a hook to get you to play the rest of the game. And I thought the way that they started this game off was incredibly brilliant. It provided a really compelling hook because before you set off on this world-spanning goal to find the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus, which is Sly Cooper's like family journal of like all their thief secrets accumulated over a vast amount of time that they've been alive. And that's been stolen from Sly, and he's on an adventure to get it back. Before you do that, you have like the intro level where you have to like break into police headquarters and get information on the Fiendish Five who stole the Thievius Raccoonus from you in the first place. And I thought that level did a really fantastic job of just introducing you to it's not super lengthy, but it does a lot in the short amount of time that it's there. It introduces you to like all the main characters. You have Sly and Bentley, and then you have obviously Carmelita the Fox, who is working with the police to try and stop you and arrest you. And it frames the entire narrative of the story in a way that is really, really compelling. And it's just it's a well-designed level that teaches you the base mechanics of the game. So I wanted to mention that just because I have a real appreciation for like intro levels, but you hit the nail right on the head. I think it's incredible the way that the thing you're looking for in this game, the Thievius Raccoonus, the way that you discover it in gameplay, like the reason you're looking for it is the narrative reason. Like you want to get it back because it's Sly's family secrets. But it rewards you with subtle gameplay improvements over time that can like tweak the way that you play. And it really feels like as you're progressing through the levels and, you know, fighting the bosses and finding all of the bottles, that Sly becomes a better thief as he like gets these pages and becomes like more experienced and you play more of these levels. And it's a really great way to connect gameplay to this narrative hook of finding all these things. It makes you want to find all these things. You mentioned finding the bottles in the levels, and there are a couple different kinds of levels in this game. Well, first of all, I have to mention the hub world, because I think the hub world integrates gameplay in a really interesting way that is, you know, more than what we've seen. Whenever I think of hub world, I like my mind immediately goes to Mario 64, but I think Sly is so much more than that, because like the hub world in itself is like a level with dangerous things in it and like secrets to find and things to collect, and then the levels are located like inside of the main hub world that feel like they're natural expansions of that area that you're in. So is there anything you want to add about like the hub worlds or anything like that, or, like just kind of like the way the game presents itself?
No, that is very well said. I do.
I'm sorry, I ramble a lot.
No, man, like I am here to. I said it at the beginning. I am the support character. I will be the Tails to your Sonic.
Okay, for sure.
I'll come along and be like, Sonic, I found these 3 rings to the 80 you collected. But no, the hub world is fantastic, and it does. Also, I don't know. The thing that I will always say about this game is that it does the little things so well, and that does stretch into that hub world. Like if you're like, okay, in order to get to that level, I have to climb up to the top of a building and run across some wires. And then when you enter that level, it's going to be a level about being on a roof, jumping across wires.
Yeah, I did find that, especially when you get, I think that was like an example in like Mesa City, where you found yourself on like top of like the building casino, and like a level earlier, you were like inside the casino, like inside the building. So it really had a really clever way of interconnecting all the levels together. Of those levels, there are a couple different kinds here. You have like your standard action platformy stealth levels, and that's where you just like progress through the level. You find all the bottles to unlock the safe, and you either get a page of the Thievius Raccoonus, or you can unlock like a schematic of the world, which will whenever you look through like your I forget the official name of it, but when you look through your binoculars, but the binocucom, yes, it'll show you on where you're looking if there are collectibles that you missed or things like that. So it makes getting the rest of the collectibles maybe you missed a little bit easier. Then there are like vehicle levels, and these range anywhere from like shooting crabs to collecting chests, using the speeder in the swamps to like light candles in a certain time frame. You have a couple levels where like Murray is driving their like thief van and like racing some people. And then you have like escort missions where Murray is trying to like advance through the stage, and as Sly, you get on like this machine gun turret, and you're like providing cover for Murray while he advances through the stage to get the key. And all the stages have these treasure keys in them. They're basically required for you to advance through the levels and get to the boss. Was there anything
might be providing covering fire for Murray? I accidentally shoot the poor hippo so often.
So yeah, I came across that the first time I was doing it. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna lay on the fire and shoot everywhere, and then I just kept. Yeah, I would shoot him, or I think one of the first there's like a level in the swamps, and you can like shoot like the poison gas barrels, and they explode and kill him. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I shot him probably more times than the enemies actually got him. So yeah, that was my bad. What about the races with Murray? What did you think about those?
I loved those. That reminded me so much of the old RC Pro-Am game. But once you get used to the handling, it's a lot of fun. And so the cool thing about the mugshot level in this is that if you were paying attention while you were driving, you could see they had billboards advertising like Panda King fireworks or Ms. Ruby love potions. And those are other characters you're going to meet down the road. So I just thought that was kind of a cool little, like, if you know what you're looking for, you see the foreshadowing.
Yeah, I think it's a cool way to make the world feel more connected and kind of advertise with things. I went back and looked for that after you mentioned it because I was like, I didn't notice. I was so focused on driving the road, I wasn't like looking around me. But I think it's really cool that the developers went out of their way to kind of include a couple of different types of gameplay here. They certainly didn't have to do that. They could have just packed this thing full of like the standard action platform stealth levels and just gave you a bunch of those. But it was a nice break in the action of like having those levels to explore, to like be able to go off and do like a vehicle level or do like an escort mission. I thought that was a really clever way to kind of break those things up.
It did, and it was really cool to get to see Murray out in the field or showing off his skills as a driver.
Yeah, I did like that too, because a lot of times that didn't come along. That first driving mission didn't come along till a couple levels into the game, and he was always sitting back at base, and I was just like, okay, well, like, what is Murray like going to do something? So I was really, really surprised when we finally got one of those driving levels, and Murray got to get in on the action for sure. And I think it gives everybody, Bentley has his reasons for being there. He's the man in the computer. He's the man on the radio. And then, Murray gets into the action, which I thought was great, which really made it feel like they were working together as a team rather than just like Sly doing everything on his own. And I think that goes back to like what you were talking about, how it's a great adventure with like this core group of characters, and the gameplay kind of reinforces that. So I love that the game was always kind of like varying up the different types of levels. Even within the standard levels themselves, like you said, if you went up to the rooftop and entered a level there, you were on a rooftop. Mugshots, Mesa City, you went into a casino. A lot of the Haitian jungle levels were like swamps or like spooky like graveyards or stuff like that. And I really like the way that they used all of the theming to kind of build out some of the different level designs. Speaking of, I just listed off a bunch of stuff there. The Fiendish Five are kind of like our core group of antagonists, and they provide some of the theming, some of the reasons for the levels, why the levels the way they are. And I'll just list those off real quick here so you guys know who we're talking about when we start like firing off names. You have Raleigh in the Isles of Wrath, which is located in Wales, and he is a frog. And that is in like an abandoned mechanical style island. You have Mugshot, who's a bulldog, Mesa City, Utah, and that's a Western style casino. You have Ms. Ruby, who is a crocodile, and her home is located in the Haitian jungle, which, like I said, is like a spooky, I felt like a Cajun style kind of swamp, got some like Louisiana vibes to it. Panda King, who's obviously a panda in the Kulin Mountains in China, and that's got some more like kind of monk temple Himalayas aesthetic. And then you have the mastermind behind everything that we'll get into. You have Clockwork in the Krakow volcano in Russia. So this is the core group of villains. They serve as the main antagonistic force to Sly, Bentley, and Murray, and they are like the bosses of all the specific areas. What do you think about the Fiendish Five as like a group of enemies, Keaton, or a group of like a boss group as like antagonistic force?
I think that they did a really good job of making them all unique. Maybe they did a fantastic job at the beginning of the game. You kind of just get to see them being all menacing and frightening. But then you get to kind of know them more. And I loved the design of Raleigh, because as the frog, whenever he would fight you, his character would do the frog like giant throat thing, and then he'd get real big and try to jump on you. And it really felt like, yes, I am fighting a frog. This is a giant anthropomorphic frog that is trying to kill me. This is how he would fight. Yeah,
so they serve as the boss fights in these areas, and they hold one of the the 5 main pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus. So you can get like I said, if you collect all the bottles in the level, you can get the lesser pieces of it. But I would say that when you defeat them in a boss fight and get one of these main pieces, that gives you access to abilities that they try to then build into later levels. Like you defeat one of them and you can get the ability to like go invisible if you're standing still, or the ability to accurately jump and land on narrow points, kind of like a ninja, or the ability to grind on rails and run across narrow paths. So the pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus you get from the boss fights do show up more often later than not. Like I would say you don't have to find any of the bottles and get any of the safes. Like you can get through the game just fine without those abilities. They're just sometimes they're nice to have additional tools in your toolkit, but these ones are necessary. They build into the game in a really great way. We talked a little bit in the Discord chat about the bosses here, and you kind of mentioned how Raleigh uses his characteristics as an animal, the way he kind of bloats up to attack you, and that a lot of the bosses don't really kind of do that. What do you think about the boss fights here?
The boss fights are great, and yeah, I mean, it is a little unfortunate that most of them just kind of felt like there'd be no difference between, like, if you were human characters fighting other human characters in a lot of these, which just, it's like you have all these different species. You can play around with it a little bit. Ms. Ruby, the alligator, did swing her tail a little bit, although her boss fight was a lot more of a rhythm game, which definitely shook things up a little bit, as compared to like most of the ones before that. Although, man, that fight was so hard. I don't know. Maybe you didn't have trouble with it.
I definitely did have trouble with it. So when you mentioned it and I got to it, I immediately knew. I was like, oh, this is what you were talking about. Because, yeah, it requires you to kind of mimic her, like Simon says, and she'll throw the button commands at you and you have to kind of hit them. Some of the timing's a little bit like kind of really precise with them. And then this happens like 3 or 4 sections in a row as like you progress through the boss fight into like the innermost like sanctum of her lair. And then, yeah, if you die on like one of those rhythm sections, you have to like basically, it's like you're replaying the whole thing over, basically.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I remember that correctly?
Yeah. That is exactly what it is like. And it's like in 2006, I'm sure that was fine. But by 2024 standards,
right.
And us being older and like you have the kids and it's just like, like, why do we even have, because in this game you do have lives and you can get extra lives and you can lose lives. And if you lose all your lives, it just kind of kicks you back to the start of whatever level you're at. There's not that much of a penalty. But even then, it's like, if I'm on the 3rd section of this rhythm game, why do I go all the way back to the front when I lose a life instead of like, why don't I start at the beginning of the 3rd stage? Why are there even lives if it's just going to be this way?
Right.
So
or I was going to say, even giving you maybe like a couple chances to fail instead of just like, if you fail once, that's it. Like you just failed. Like you can't even make any mistake at all.
Yes. And yeah, like you said, sometimes it was, again, like, I don't know if it's that my original hardware is 25 years old, but sometimes it's that those controllers were a little off. So I pressed O at the right time game. I totally did.
No, I felt the same thing too. And I was, like I said, I was emulating it on my LCD screen on my laptop with a pretty modern controller by, well, I guess what you consider modern standards. And it still felt like there was a little bit of a delay in there. And again, I don't know if that's because like I was emulating it on a laptop or what, but I mean, you saying that you felt it was there's like a little precision thing in there too, kind of makes me feel justified, because I was just like, oh man, like I tend to think my rhythm is usually pretty good. I shouldn't be failing these as bad as I am.
Yeah, but then it's like about 20 in a row, it felt, I think, each time for each section. So you end up having to do like 80 correct presses in a row, and like, I don't know, that's just easy to miss.
And they only get harder as like the 4th section is by far like the hardest one, because she's throwing all kinds of symbols at you. So, but yeah, I definitely found that one the most challenging. I do think it was a nice a kind of break in the monotony of just like, oh, attack guy and damage him and make him take damage. The boss fights did feel pretty unique, though they were. I put in my notes here that they reminded me of some Crash Bandicoot bosses, kind of the way they were styled, but they were definitely more mechanically in depth than like a Crash Bandicoot or a Spyro boss, because those are, I mean, Crash Bandicoot, for as much as I love that game, the boss fights are terrible just because they're so stupid and easy. It's like, oh, hit the guy 3 times and that's it. And they're all the same. But I liked, like the rally fight was good. Eventually, I ground my way through the Ms. Ruby fight for sure. And then the other two, like Mugshot and Panda King, I thought they were fine. Mugshot's deal was kind of like you had to like light up some lamps to kind of like burn him, and then Panda King was just kind of you have to avoid his attacks and all of the different moves that he does, and until you can like get to him and then just beat the crap out of him with your staff. So nothing too crazy going on there. Clockwork was probably the most visually interesting just because of how like menacing he is, and his whole kind of layer leading up to him is kind of like a boss fight as well. And I guess we could talk about that now because it is technically gameplay, and I know I don't really care about spoilers. This is like a 20-year-old game, so if you care about spoilers for a 20-year-old game, like I'm sorry. I thought that Clockwork fight at the end was pretty intense because I was expecting to go into his lair and have a fresh set of levels, and that was certainly not the case. It's kind of like a bunch of stuff you have to do until you just kind of get to the end, because he kidnaps Carmelita, so you have to like rescue her, and then you get to control her and do like a shooting section while like Sly advances through the level, and then you even get to do some hacking stuff with Bentley, and then you're climbing a collapsing tower while it's like sinking into the lava, and then you fight Clockwork, and that's like the whole extent of that 5th area. I was expecting to get themed levels and themed things to do around him. So like when I got to that part of the game and it's like, oh, the game's wrapping up now. I just thought that was really, really interesting.
That 5th area is so beautiful because it instills that the game is done playing around. Mm-hmm. Everything has hit the fan. It's time to heck and go. It removes all of the hunting for clue mechanics, and it's just you're going from this mission straight to this mission. There's not even a hub world. It's just, here's your level, here's your next level, here's your next level. This is serious. There is no time to waste, no time to fool around. This is all happening right now. And then once you do finally get that Carmelita Sly team up, it's like, yes!
Yes, like star-crossed lovers. Like they can work together. And because there are some levels in the game where like Carmelita like will chase you through the level as you're playing. She'll like shoot at you, and it adds kind of like an interesting wrinkle that you have to simultaneously avoid being shot by her and explore the level. And then it flips where it's like, oh, she's gonna help you instead in this instance. But you're 100% right. That area is. We're not messing around in that area anymore. And Clockwork's lair inside that volcano in Russia is incredibly menacing. And I think that takes it up a step because, I love all of the Fiendish 5, but the previous 4, they're still kind of cartoony. And when we talk about the plot, there are a couple of them that like we get some interesting backstories on them that make you feel kind of sympathetic to things that happened to them and the reason why they grew up the way that they did. Not Clockwork, though. Clockwork is just, he is evil and menacing. And we found out that he's been kind of pulling the strings behind this whole thing the whole time. But I don't really have anything else to say about the boss fights or anything like that. I think in terms of like the framework of the gameplay, the Fiendish 5 are a fantastic group of antagonists led by Clockwork, who is, I think, an iconic villain from this era of PS2 games. I put him up there with some of the other villains for sure. Do you have anything else you want to add about kind of gameplay or anything before we jump over to how the game looks?
One last little thing that I do want to throw in there is that on the left side of the screen is a health meter for all the characters. And if you watch, it's got their little face at the bottom of the health meter. And as you beat up the characters, their little face will get more and more beat up as you go. Yes.
And that's something that I found about this game. Like you mentioned it up at the top of the section a little bit here. The little things this game does, what that like Now we kind of feel like, we take that for granted. And now a lot of games that are gigantic freaking AAA productions don't really bother with a lot of the little things little time, because it's just like you'll be overlooking them. But yeah, this game is this game only takes about maybe 10 hours, 12 hours to complete if you're really like looking for everything. So it's not a very long experience, but the things you do experience are enhanced by little details, and because of the game's length, they're able to put time into little details like that, like the little faces at the bottom of the boss bars. And it really is just another. It's relatively minor thing, but you notice it, and I think you appreciate it, and it just goes to show you a better level of appreciation for the work that developers did. So I 100% agree with you. That was a really, really nice touch. They didn't have to add it, but they did. So kudos to them. All right, yeah, so audio visual presentation. Keaton, I love the way this game looked a lot. I loved everything about it. There wasn't like a single time where I like saw something on screen and was just like, I don't really know, that doesn't look right, or any kind of like performance dips in like the frames or anything like that, or just anything about the general art direction that felt like it was off to me. I thought that it was a really, really great package. It creates a style that I can immediately see it, and I could identify it as Sly Cooper. I'm like, oh, this is a distinct art direction that Sly Cooper has. I know that, they did some of the cell shading stuff, and I know there was, for whatever reason, like some people weren't thrilled with like the cell shading back in this era. I think specifically to like when Wind Waker came out, a lot of people weren't happy that Wind Waker looked the way it did, which I think is stupid. But I think games that use this style of art, these cell shaded graphics, tend to age really well. And I think we've come full circle on this specifically. We have games that have featured it more recently, like Breath of the Wild and things like that. Not to quite the cartoony extent that I think that like Wind Waker and Sly go to, but to an extent that I think everyone recognizes it's a great art direction that it will age particularly well. So yeah, anytime like I looked at Sly, I was like, this feels quintessentially Sly Cooper. This feels like the early 2000s PlayStation 2 era. Like this is what I think of when I think of the PlayStation 2, is like graphics like this. And I think it's great. And this extends to basically everything in the game. The world and level design, the art direction makes each of these locations feel like super unique. Makes it feel like they're all part of a larger world, and kind of adds to like the globe spanning adventure that you're on for this game. It would be easy just to have like a generic hub world and just have some like worlds you jump into and kind of make them feel disjointed. But I think the art direction backs the gameplay elements and makes it feel like you're on this incredible adventure across the entire world, and these really, really complicated heists to get back a part of Sly's heritage. So do you have any thoughts on like kind of how the game looks and how it presents itself from like a graphic perspective?
I love that cartoon look. It goes along with that feeling of this game is going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, even when tragedy plus cartoon equals comedy, because normally your character falls in the water and drowns, like that's tragic. But in this game, it's just such a goofy, over-the-top animation. He pulls off his hat and just kind of places it over his heart and then just sinks like farewell. And so, yeah, until you get that upgrade that lets you swim in water, or at least like jump back to the land. That was my favorite upgrade.
Oh, that upgrade was so nice. I agree.
But no, like it's just a fun. The cartoon setting sets a fun atmosphere of not seriousness. Like this is going to be something that you're here to have a good time. And I guess probably should have thrown this out in gameplay. The game wants you to be challenged, but wants you to overcome those challenges. If you die at a spot long enough, you will, because it's a one-hit kill game, but you can get lucky horseshoes that will protect you from a hit. And if you die at a spot too often, then it will just start you with a lucky horseshoe. And if you're as skilled as I am and keep dying at a certain spot, it will eventually grant you 2 lucky horseshoes. And it's like, come on, you got this time.
Right. No, you did. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is worth noting that yes, this is a one kill game, and usually if you're like spotted or something, you can be killed pretty easily. I didn't mind that though because I felt that it kind of added to the direction that the game was going. That Sly is a thief, and a lot of the levels that I struggled on or I had trouble getting through, I found that like when I stopped to take my time and kind of proceeded through them like more methodically, like a thief would do, I tended to get through them a little bit easier. Like, yeah, it took me a little longer. I wasn't like trying to speed run the levels or anything, but when you stop and engage with the game the way it wants you to, and it would, Sly is a thief. Sly is not a Mario. He's not a Ratchet. He's not pulling guns out and gunning everything down. Like, he's sneaking. He's a thief. He's using the shadow. He can fight, but he's using the shadows to his advantage. And I think that's a big part of also how the game presents itself as well, because you have a lot of the platforming elements in the levels that would kind of suggest that, right? You have like laser grids that can, if you cross them, the alarm will go off, or almost all the enemies have some kind of like flashlight that will alert everybody if you step within the flashlight's area. And so I think that goes back to some of the graphic design and the art direction too, in reinforcing that this is not just a standard run-of-the-mill platformer. Like, you are a thief and you have to sneak, and the whole game kind of exudes this kind of 1950s noir kind of heist type of thing. I was just going to say heist, but I wanted to specifically mention, like, I felt like it was a movie from like the 50s and 60s, because heist movies now are like going guns blazing and like blow off the doors of the bank vault and like all this stuff. And like back in the day, it was like a lot more like methodical and planned out and stuff. So I think the whole game has that kind of sense of direction. And that plays into the gameplay you mentioned, the one-hit kill. It's like, yeah, if you're a thief. If you get caught, you're going to jail. Like, that's one time. So
I didn't even think of it that way, but no, you're absolutely right. The game does encourage you to, and the levels do too. There are some levels where it's like, here are 3 guards. You can try to take them out, or you can just find a way to sneak around them.
Yeah. Mike, have you played the rest of the games in the trilogy, Keaton?
Yes.
So,
yes, I have.
I feel like this game kind of did a good job of striking a balance between platforming and some stealth elements. I was doing some reading on like the trilogy as a whole. They say that in the later games, they kind of like dive into those stealth elements a little bit more. Is that accurate?
It has been 8 years since I've played
Just
them.
as you remember,
so
that's fair.
I had fun with them, and I
fair.
do know that they keep a lot of the thieving mechanics in there, and without going into too much, they introduce some cool, like at one point you get the ability to pickpocket, and that was really fun.
Oh, then that's perfect. That's exactly the type of thing I'm looking for. I'm like, I want them to explore this kind of fusion between this stealth and this platforming a little bit more. Like, it doesn't have to be like Metal Gear Solid or anything like that, where we're like sneaking through and can't get caught. Like, I like a little bit of platforming in there too, and the opportunities to get in the action and beat the crap out of a dude if I have to. But I think the way that they blend the stealth elements and the platforming is incredible. And like I have in my notes here, I think the entire art direction reinforces that. And I think the music does too. It creates this incredibly kind of atmospheric soundtrack that just kind of backs up. It's not overbearing. And I mentioned that there's no one track on the soundtrack that would like stand out to me, or like a common theme that would like prevail in like any of the musical numbers. But the music does an incredible job of like lending itself to this noir style of animation where it like I said, it feels like a high stakes heist. And I think if this game had like a loud, bombastic soundtrack, that would take away from some of this like heist style atmosphere if you had something that was like as loud or as goofy as like a Crash Bandicoot, or as something that was like as an earworm as like a Mario soundtrack.
Yeah, now that you mention it, the music is there, but you're right. It is very stealthy in that it's there, but you don't really think about it. Well, you notice it was just gone, and yeah, because you are supposed to be sneaking around, and I don't know. It's like, did you ever see that movie A Quiet Place?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if it was with your group, but with us, like when we were sitting there watching, nobody was making noise.
It was the most quiet theater experience I think I ever had. It was dead silent. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. Yeah, if the soundtrack was intrusive, I think that would take away from like this atmosphere they're going for. And like I said, it's not a knock on the soundtrack that it doesn't have what I would consider like, like the bangers, like the Final Fantasy VII battle theme, or like, big bombastic pieces that stick in your ear, because I think that would do the game a disservice if it had a soundtrack like that. I think atmospheric soundtracks are just as good and accomplish what they're trying to do. I don't know why. This isn't like a one-to-one thing. I was thinking a lot of like Metroid when I thought of the score for this game, about how like Metroid is not like a super like iconic soundtrack in the way that it like has a bunch of songs that you recognize, but the atmosphere that it helps create in the Metroid games is like one of like isolation and kind of like fear and uneasiness. And Sly does the same thing, just it kind of makes you feel like you're like in a heist, and it lends to the atmosphere of the game, which I think is a perfectly fantastic way to do a soundtrack. Anything else I would have been like way too distracted, but it didn't take me out of it didn't take like the whole time. I felt like I was in the mindset of, I'm a thief, I'm pulling off these heists, I got to get all this stuff back. And the music did nothing to like pull me out of that. The audio and visual presentation did nothing to pull me out of that. Everything I thought about the game as a package reinforced the themes of the game, and I don't think you can ask anything more from a game to do something like that.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's great music on top of great writing, and let's segue into that plot.
That's kind of a nice segue, because the writing is a part of presentation, but the plot here, it's not, like I said, this game is only about 10 to 12 hours. If you're a relatively competent gamer, about 10 to 12 hours. If you played it before, play it consistently, you can probably get through it in like half the time probably. And but the plot is kind of the driving force of this game. Like we mentioned, the Thievius Raccoonus was stolen. The Thievius Raccoonus is the tome of the collective knowledge of the entire Cooper family, all the knowledge handed down from Cooper to Cooper across all of time. And Sly is the latest member, the latest in line of this Cooper clan, right? The legendary family of Sly's ancestors who were thieves throughout all of time. We come to find out that the reason that Sly is on this adventure to find the Thievius Raccoonus is because the Fiendish Five, led by Clockwork, attacked and killed Sly's father and mother, Connor and Henriette Cooper, when Sly was just a little kid, and they stole the pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus. They ripped the book into a bunch of different pieces. And when he grows up, Sly embarks on a worldwide odyssey to bring down the Fiendish Five and restore the Thievius Raccoonus and his family's legacy. And of course, we mentioned he's assisted by his two good friends, Bentley, who's like this tech genius, and Murray, who is like amazing behind the wheel of. He's basically, I thought of him as like the getaway driver, kind of his role in there. But it turns out that the leader of the Fiendish Five, Clockwork, he has gone up against like the Cooper clan across like all of history. And this is revealed at the end of the game as Sly is collecting the pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus, and you kind of get these kind of cutscenes where he's talking about them. You get like flashbacks, and you see this like ominous bird-shaped figure in like the flashbacks of finding all the pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus. And it's revealed that Clockwork like essentially became immortal by replacing most of his body with a machine. So he's like this giant mechanical owl, and he's kind of had this envious approach towards the Cooper clan for like most of his life. He's envious of the Cooper clan's reputation, And the way that they were constantly able to defeat him across history and outsmart him across history, that's what led him to ultimately gathering the Fiendish Five and killing Sly's parents. And that's kind of the catalyst for Sly's adventure. Kind of a dark story for a game that's supposed to be kind of lighthearted and fun, don't you think?
It is, and it's so weird because it is such a, that last fifth of the game is such a shift, because yeah, up until then it's been serious in that Sly's trying to get his stuff back, but it's lighthearted and everything else. Even when you go to these people's lairs and you're running around the hub world, you'll hear that the villain will get over the intercom and address his troops, and it will be something ridiculous. Like at one point, when you're dealing with Raleigh, he gets over the intercom and he's like, "Hello, all of my minions. Congratulations. We've crashed 50 ships in our Bermuda Triangle plot. What if you didn't suck? We'd have crashed 100." And just over the top. Ridiculous. But once you get to Clockwork, all of that is gone. There is no Goofy in his section of the story at all.
Yeah, I felt that, going back to the Fiendish Five, they are the antagonistic force, but I mentioned that I thought they felt kind of like Crash Bandicoot villains. They serve kind of a similar role in that they are kind of cartoony caricatures at the same time, and they are an antagonistic force, but you don't take them too seriously. Similar to how I feel about most of the bosses in Crash Bandicoot. But Clockwork, you that last part of the game is a tonal shift that I think works because the game has kind of reinforced its theme for the first like 4 levels that you play, and then you get to Clockwork, and there is this big kind of more serious shift that I think really brings a nice like crescendo to the end of this game for sure. I have some thoughts on just the plot in general. I love it as a story, as a narrative for sure. The way it's structured is brilliant, I think. It starts with a great intro level where you're trying to steal the information on the Fiendish Five. That introduces us to Sly, Bentley, and Carmelita. And we get pieces of the story kind of told to us as we traverse the different worlds associated with the Fiendish Five members. And that includes, like you said, you put a note here that we get some past memories of some of these Fiendish Five members and how they came to be who they really are. And I agree with you. I think it's funny how this crew helped murder your family, and the game kind of gives us some sympathetic backstories to expect us to kind of feel a little bit bad for them.
Yeah, because Mugshots was like, he was the runt of the litter and he was bullied. And then he watched a gangster movie and decided gangsters were cool. So he took steroids and became big and buff and a gangster.
Right.
I'm like, all right, like I get the whole like got bullied and found this cool icon to focus on. He did murder my parents, though.
Right. Or the one, I think it was Miss Ruby became like a necromancer because she didn't have any friends. And so she made like the ghosts and the skeletons be her friends. And I'm like, that's kind of messed up, but like, I get it. Yeah.
I guess that's to kind of keep it a bit more lighthearted. Just like, they did terrible things, but like, hey, they're just kind of wacky characters themselves.
Yeah, the game is definitely, it's goofy and lighthearted when it needs to be, but it can dip into the more like serious side too, and I appreciate that because I don't think all games kind of toe that line very well. Mm-hmm. And like we said, the Clockwork stuff at the end is a definite tonal shift for sure, but it's not like a tonal shift that I think provides whiplash, because sometimes when games go for a tonal shift and you don't see it coming, it can be kind of like off-putting if you're like, well, the game has just spent the last 20 hours being this and now it's this. But I think in Sly, I think it works. I think they pull it off incredibly well, and it's a nice kind of subversion of you're going into the fifth area expecting more of the same, and they don't give you more of the same. They give you kind of this kind of sprint towards the conclusion of the game, and it really works well in terms of like who Clockwork is as a character. And I didn't even mind that we didn't really even get to spend that much time with Clockwork because he's just kind of like this menacing force in the background, and I think that works just fine as kind of a main antagonist. And I'm assuming based on the ending, so Sly defeats Clockwork, and with Carmelita's help, and Carmelita ends up like catching up with him, and Sly is kind of like putting on the charm and gives her a quick kiss before running off, and she finds out that he's handcuffed her to like a railing in Russia, and now he's like on the run from her again. So I kind of liked how that kind of played in. I'm assuming that in later Sly games, after we see the credits roll, we kind of see some of the light left in Clockwork's eyes. I'm assuming that he'll be back, or his part in this story is not exactly done. You don't have to tell me exactly, but am I kind of on the right track?
I'm just going to be a little coy about it. Just be like, we'll have to cover the second game and find out.
For sure. Well, there definitely will be a second game for sure. Do you have any other kind of thoughts on the plot and stuff? I know this is going to be a little bit shorter of an episode, but it's a shorter game, and I'm very appreciative that it was a shorter game after playing Final Fantasy Tactics last month.
Final thoughts. On
the plot specifically, and then we'll go final thoughts across the game as like a whole.
Final thoughts, plot specifically. The plot for the game, it does exactly what it needs to do. It's here's who you are, here's what you're doing, and here's why you're trying to do it. Here are your friends that you meet along the way, and your rival turned / romance story arc as well. And yeah, then it just goes.
Yeah, I would say that in the course of a like 8 to 12 hour game, it's a concise but I think gripping narrative, and I think it grips you from the beginning. It sets up with a really great hook, and it does what all video games back then needed to do. It needed to set up enough of a hook for a sequel so that you would buy the sequel. And I would have played the sequel regardless, even if the story landing at the end would have been a little bit flat, because I loved. I'll get into my final thoughts. I love the game in general, but I think the way it lands narratively, kind of some of this tension between Sly and Carmelita, and this potential looming return of Clockwork. There are no happy endings, right? This is just a temporary happiness, because I feel like there's gonna be another thing we need to do in the sequel. Something else is gonna happen. So the narrative got me to the point where I wanted to continue to see what the story did. And for me, I mean, Unlockables, story of video games. Like I've released 27 episodes on the story of Kingdom freaking Hearts. Story is super important to me, and I went into this expecting kind of a noir platformer, and I was it kind of exceeded all of I already had high expectations for what I wanted out of this game, and it kind of exceeded it. So, yeah, let's roll into final thoughts here, because, we've been praising this game a bunch, and I assume your final thoughts, Keaton, probably aren't going to be super negative about it.
It is just no going in that you are dealing with a 2005, 2006 game.
So it was 2002 when it first came out, and then I think it was remastered in 06 or 07. I think the remaster collection came out. But still, yeah, it's that same era.
So yeah, you've got yourself a 2002 game, which means that it's not going to be quite as forgiving as a lot of your games of this level are in 2024. Like I'm sitting there doing like the boss fight. I have to redo the entire boss fight, not just that segment that I was at. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I said, it wants you to work to succeed, but it wants you to succeed. And if you need it, it will start dropping you a couple of hints or a couple of little bonuses, or like the racing mini game. Yeah, it started dropping me extra nitros to pick up and use, because I was not good at them.
I noticed that too, yeah, because I failed the racing games a few times before I finally got a grip on it. And then, the last time I was like, there seems to be a lot more red cans on the race. I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it wants you to work for it, but if you're struggling, it will give you a helping hand. But no, overall, it is just a really relaxing, fun game. It's that perfect palate cleanser after you play something that is crazy deep or crazy long, and you just want something to like. I'm trying to think of like what's the Kingdom Hearts one with the 3 characters that ends on a real downer.
Oh,
Birth by
358
Sleep.
days. Oh yeah, Birth by Sleep.
Birth by Sleep. So
Yes.
you're like, when you get done with Birth by Sleep, you're like, oh, that was a really great story, but the world is dark and everyone's hearts are filled with darkness and
Yes.
depressing. This is the kind of game you go to after that.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. And that's even more, it's appropriate that you made that point because, like I said, the first game of the month was Final Fantasy Tactics, and that game was fantastic. But yeah, definitely needed a palate cleanser after that game because that one's long and grueling for sure. Yeah, like I said, I had really high expectations for this one, and that made me a little bit nervous because usually when I have high expectations for things, I find that very rarely can they exceed those high expectations because, I like want this mind-blowing experience. But I'll say that I went into Sly and it exceeded everything that I thought it was going to be. It really did, and I'm kind of upset at myself that I had missed it for all these years, and I had missed it. And, I'm like, I'd played Jack, I played Ratchet. Why did I miss Sly? I don't understand. And I think of those, if you were to take those 3 games side by side, Jack, Ratchet, and Sly 1, as kind of like the first 3 new platform games. I mean, all those games got sequels, obviously. I think of those first 3, I think Sly 1 is probably my favorite out of those because I like Ratchet and Clank 2 better, and I never finished Jack and Daxter. So I think in terms of like the second wave of PlayStation 2 mascots, I would put Sly probably at the top right now. And everything that this game did was just so refreshing. And I don't know if it's just because over the last couple of years I've been playing like all these Kingdom Hearts, these giant like AAA JRPGs that take hours and hours to do and are just like so expansive that they lose themselves and they lose sight of what they're doing sometimes. Sly never loses sight of what it's trying to do. And that was so I can't even describe to you how refreshing that was. And refreshing to have a game that I could finish in 12 hours that did everything that I felt like it set out to do. And when I got to the end, there was no disappointment with anything that I had experienced at all. It works so well as a video game, as a package, from gameplay to the presentation of the graphics to the music to the plot. All those things build off of one another and create this incredible experience that I was not prepared to like it this much. And I think that was the most surprising thing. I knew I would like it going in, but this really has been one of my favorite games that I've played this year. And I've played a lot of games this year, and I've played a lot of RPGs, and I've played some of my favorite games of all time this year. And yes, Sly is an incredible package that you can play in a weekend, in a short week. And just from what I think of video games, when I think of video games, Sly checks all the boxes. Fun, great narrative, looks great. The fact that it's from 2002 doesn't really bother me. Yes, there are quality of life things now that would make an experience like this today easier. And I'm sure if they made a new Sly game, which if you're listening, Sony, please make another Sly game. I know Sucker Punch is working on Ghosts of Yotei. Please put somebody on another Sly game. I know we had Thieves in Time like back in 2013. It's time. Ratchet came back. I doubt Jack and Daxter will come back because Naughty Dog's going to make a million Last of Us sequels. But Ratchet and Clank came back. Like it's time to bring Sly back. I think people would be really, really receptive to that. I mean, I just see the reception of like the last Ratchet and Clank game, A Rift Apart, and a game like Astrobot. And there's room in Sony's lineup for games like this, and I think Sly would fit in there really well. I can't imagine like a Sly game on the PS5 would look fucking incredible, like with that type of art style. It would blow. Yeah, it would look incredible. So, this is my glowing go ahead.
No, I think that another Sly game is what Sony is what Sony needs right now. Nothing, not a big fancy AAA 80-hour thing, just like small, precise narrative. Sly Cooper 4 does into it. We need that 5th game, and you know what? I'm holding out hope. just this year, maybe last year, just last year, I played Alan Wake 2. It took me forever, like 13 years to get that Alan Wake 2, and
Right.
all hope we thought was lost. But it's out. We played it. Dreams come true. If the games can get made. So we're still holding out hope for Sly Cooper 5.
There does seem to be an appetite for some of these things that I would not have expected for them to come back. For sure. I didn't know if we'd ever get another Ratchet and Clank game with kind of the way, Sony was going with like these games like God of War, Horizon, these big, like you said, these big AAA games. And Ratchet is impressive in its own right. But yeah, there does seem to be more of an appetite that I've noticed this year for, I don't know if it's just people are kind of getting tired of like these bigger bloated AAA games, but I think there would be, I think now is the time to bring back something like a Sly. There seems to be an appetite for these older things, especially amongst our generation who are so receptive to things like nostalgia that we eat that up. Like, yeah, if I'm gonna buy every single Kingdom Hearts game that comes out just because that game's so attached to my memory or my childhood. And I guarantee you that if a new Sly came out, that would be something that people would play, especially after the success of something like an Astrobot or Astro's Playroom, whatever it was called. I think there's an appetite there for these types of games, and I think we need more of them. We need more of them because not every game can be this gigantic, freaking multi-$100, $200 million production that needs to sell 10 million copies to succeed, or the studio goes out of business. I think there's room in the industry for studios making things like Sly that wouldn't have to cost $200 million.
Yeah, and I don't want to disparage giant AAA crazy games because I love them a lot as well. But like, you can only invest. You play that, you're like, that's a game I'm going to be playing for like 3 to 6 months because I can only play games so fast.
Right.
That yeah, there is a lot to be said, and again, like you point out, like there's such high stakes that if they're not crazy successful, then it's considered a massive failure. So yeah, like you gotta love the little game that, sure, even if it only sells like 3,000 copies, that's still enough to make a success. Or I mean, you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. I know exactly what you're saying, and I'm finding now that Sly. I gotta be honest, Keaton. If I could get just like emotional here for a second, as my child has been born, I've watched my child grow up. My free time is more and more fleeting. I just don't have as much time as I used to be able to do things. So I'm thinking about some of the things that I got away with playing earlier this year: Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Persona 5, games that I spent 80 to 100 hours on. And now that I'm here, my son is about to be 10 months old. He's crawling around. Like, I don't have the luxury of just committing 100 hours to a giant experience like that. But Sly specifically fits so well into like my current lifestyle that I was really worried. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to like give up on games for a little bit. But Sly fit into my lifestyle so well that I was like, I can still game with experiences like this. Maybe I have to put down the 100-hour games for a little while because I have to focus on raising my family. But I was so afraid that I wasn't going to have time to like game and have that time for myself. But Sly was like the perfect thing that I needed at this specific time to like remind me of my love of gaming and like remind me that, hey, I can still like do this and have balance in life and stuff. So not to get like heavy on you here at the end.
No, I think that's beautiful, and yeah, it's what you need when you need it, and that's a wonderful niche to have.
So I think we can both say I'm recommending Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus if you get a chance to play it. If you need something to play that's just a shorter experience at the end of a massive game that you've played, this is a perfect one. So I think I would recommend it. Keaton, would you give it your stamp of approval and recommend too?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs way up. Yeah, this is like a solid. If I don't like giving number scores, but this would definitely be like a 9 out of 10 for me. It was great. And maybe not so much if you don't like platformers. Hey, if that's not your thing, maybe you won't enjoy it as much, but there's just a certain charm to games from this era when everything didn't feel quite so like corporatized, and I really, really appreciated that Sly did that. So, but yeah, I think with that, we've kind of said all that we can. I've gushed about Sly for like an hour and a half. That's all I have to say on it. Keaton, man, thank you so much for joining me here to sing this game's praises. I really, really appreciate you giving me some time out of your night. It means a lot that you volunteered that you voted for this game in the Discord community and you volunteered to come on the episode. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you let me come on. Again, without like, I'm sure the listener has noticed, my podcasting skills ain't all the greatest. I am powered by passion, not professionalism. So I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come in and talk about this game and encouraging me to play it again. Because it's something that does need to be played at least every 8 years.
Yes, at least every 8 years. Yeah, I agree with you for sure. But yeah, no, your passion is definitely evident. I apologize. I tend to ramble way too much when I'm recording episodes. So, having you here and just remind me of things that I would have just rambled right over if I was just running down the outline here really meant a lot to me, and it means a lot to me that you're part of our community, and I'm happy to have met you and made a friend. It's real. Don't let anybody ever tell you that there aren't good people on the internet. There are still some of us here. We just, you got to get past some of the shitty people and then you find the good ones.
Yeah. We're hiding in the shadows like Sly Cooper, waiting
Right.
to just throw a compliment when you're not looking.
Right. Our communities aren't quite as loud and bombastic and airing our grievances. We like to talk about the positives and the good things. So,
Person likes thing does not get the attention it should.
No, you're 100% right. And person likes thing is more often seen as cringy than sincere. So it's almost a crime to like anything these days. And that's been one of the most difficult things for sure.
What do you mean they liked it? Well, didn't there anything? Well, I mean, there was that one boss fight that was kind of frustrating, but yeah, even then it wasn't that bad.
So even then I think that's the beautiful thing. We're able to find something that we were just like, yeah, this part was a little bit rough, but that part doesn't define the whole experience. And I think people just have blinders for like the bad things that they see. And then it's like, this one thing was bad, and therefore it like reflects on the entire experience, which is not true at all. Would the game be better if that part was better? Yes. That does not mean the game is still not a fantastic game. It is. So, learn to critique things better, kids. Media literacy and all that fun stuff, right?
Right.
Don't just yell on Twitter. It's not good for your health.
It's not. Constructive criticism is so much more effective.
I agree. So, Keaton, before we go, I usually give my guests time at the end to like shill anything they want to share. Is there anything you'd like to share before we go, where the people can find you on the internet? Anything you might be working on?
Sure. Let's do this. All right. So I am Poppy the Masked Keaton. I can be found on the Unlockables Discord. And I tell you could find me on Blue Sky, but I don't remember my name on Blue Sky. Most what I really want to talk about, though, is that I help run the board game room for Furry Week in Atlanta. It is a giant furry/costuming convention in Atlanta and taking place on Mother's Day weekend over at the Marriott Marquis. And we would love to have you stop by. It is, in particular, I work our board game room, so I am very proud of it. We have over 600 different unique board games, and They are all free with admission to the convention. Unlike other cons that will make you pay an additional amount for your board games, nah. You paid for the convention, you get access to the game room, and we even have prizes and giveaways. And we also, because you're a video game fan, dear listener, we have a ginormous video game room. We bring in a lot of arcade games. We have a lot of Xboxes, PlayStations, pinball. You have free-to-play pinball as well.
Oh, my God.
And I know if you're listening, you go like, that sounds fun, but you're thinking, but I'm not a furry. That's okay. First off, play Sly Cooper again, pay attention to Carmelita Fox, your thoughts may change. But even if they don't, even if you are not a furry and do not identify as a furry, Furry Weekend Atlanta is about letting people be who they want to be for a weekend. And if the person you want to be for the weekend is someone that plays board games and video games for 4 days straight, we are happy to have you. Our charity is Lost and Found Youth. It helps get homes for homeless youth. So, like, even if you're just... I want people to come to help support that. So yeah, if you just want to come and play video games and board games, we are happy to have you. You do not need to be a part of the furry community to be welcome at Furry Weekend Atlanta. That's what I've got to plug. I don't think you've ever had a guest plug a convention before,
no.
But it's an unconventional thing. It's unconventional to plug a convention.
No, that's okay. Like I said, I want to give people time to share anything that they're passionate about. I can definitely tell that you're passionate about that. And you're doing the Lord's work as far as I'm concerned, because if there's anything that we need more of in this world, we need more spaces where people can just be themselves, especially in light of certain events that will go unnamed on this podcast. But yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate you being such a big part of that, giving to that charity and providing people a space where they can just get away for a little while and be passionate, whether that's board games, video games, whatever it is they want to be passionate about. So Keaton, thank you. That's incredible. And I'll look up all that stuff. I'll find your Blue Sky. I'll find all that stuff. I'll put it in the links for the episode so people can find that information if they want to. But yeah. Thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure. Do it again next year for Sly 2?
If I'm not buried in diapers and 2 children, absolutely. I think so. I think it's definitely doable because this game, it sounds like a game that will fit in my hectic schedule. But yeah,
that's
Chris,
right. Child number 2 is on the way.
Yeah, that's the first time I've said it on the air too. But yeah, surprise listeners, I have baby number 2 on the way. So yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, hi. As far as my stuff goes, you've found the show. Welcome. My name is Eric. I host this crazy, I don't even know what to call this crazy adventure we've been on through video games on this little corner of the internet. If you want to find out all of my socials, you can go over to linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. All that stuff is good there. I finally added my Blue Sky link because I'm getting off of the horrible X app because it's just horrible. It's a cesspool of negativity. I have found that the community on Blue Sky is much more aligned with the type of energy I'd like to be putting into my life. So definitely go check that out. You can join our Discord. I'd also encourage you to check out some of the other Discords from some of our other communities. I'm very busy with a baby, so my Discord tends to be a little more dead than the other ones, but you can find Keaton in the Secret Levels Discord. You can find him in the Pixel Project Radio Discord. Both those Discords are very, very lively, a very, very robust community of people that talk about tons and tons of things. Video games. I know that there's some wrestling stuff that goes on in the Secret Levels Discord. Rick talks about books and movies and all that other stuff. So we have a great interconnected community of people that you can find me and Keaton in all these other Discord servers and talk to us there. And then the other thing I have to plug is the Unlockables Patreon is back. I'm working on some bonus content to put up there, but if you feel like supporting the show monetarily, you can subscribe at the $3 tier, and anything that you give to the show goes back into getting things to enhance the show, whether that's games to play. I need some new lights. I'm going to be needing a new computer here pretty soon, so I put all that stuff that you give me back into the show, making more content for you guys, and I don't lock any of my stuff behind a paywall, so I make extra stuff like some vlogs and stuff that are kind of unrelated to Unlockables. All the content that you know and love is still on the main feed. Guiding keys, stuff I do, like episodes like this with Keaton, all that stuff remains free on the main feed. I don't charge any extra for that. So, but thank you guys so much for listening again. It's been great. And I think this is a ringing endorsement of a game that if you haven't played it, definitely put it on your backlog, bump it up your backlog to play in 2025. I think it's a great game. But as for myself and for Keaton over here, that is going to do it for this episode. Always remember, it's not just a story of video games. It is a story of you. Have a good day, guys.
And may your heart be your guiding key. I got to say the thing!